This is London, the vibrant capital city of England. The Romans were the first to establish a settlement here in around AD 50. It quickly grew in size and importance, and they made it the capital of Roman Britain, which they named Londinium. The name Londinium had pre-Roman origins. The River Thames enabled goods to be imported directly into the center of the country. The city developed as a communication hub that helped shape modern Britain. Today we are going in search of what remains of the Roman capital. Before the Roman invasion, this area was largely uninhabited, except for a few riverside farm settlements. The Romans invaded in AD 43 with an invasion force of 4 legions and auxiliaries, consisting of 40,000 troops, which was led by General Aulus Plautius. As the Romans' invasion beachhead was located in Kent at Richborough, they needed to establish a crossing point over the Thames, which they potentially located at Southwark. The exact location of the invasion crossing over the Thames is not known. Some opinions believe it may have been further west, at Westminster. It was Colchester that the Romans would initially make their capital, although London would soon replace it. In AD 47 a settlement was established on 2 small hills on the north side of the Thames, currently where St. Paul's Cathedral and Leadenhall Market are located. The River Thames is tidal with easy access to the sea. It became a hub for boats transporting goods and materials. With its position to key roads, it meant easy transport of goods throughout the whole province, which allowed Londinium to quickly grow into the most vibrant town in the whole province. The first inhabitants of Londinium were probably Roman traders, who migrated from Gaul and Spain. We start our tour on the westbound platform of the Tower Hill, London Underground station, where commuters and tourists hurrying about their day-to-day business are completely unaware of this historic fragment of Roman wall. The fragment is buried high up within the underground wall. The wall can be found at the far eastern part of the platform. It doesn't look very impressive today, as it is coated in a thick layer of dirt. But in the 1880s over 70 feet of wall stood here, and was destroyed when the Underground Railway was built. We are now heading to the surface where we will see the best preserved section of the Roman Londinium wall. The Romans started to build the wall around the city in about AD 200, during the reign of Septimus Severus. The wall defined London's boundaries and proclaimed its status as the most important city in Roman Britain. The wall would have been an impressive symbol of Roman power, and would have allowed the Romans to control the flow of goods and people, and to impose and collect taxes. In front of the wall is an impressive statue of the Emperor Trajan. Trajan approved a prolific number of building projects, which might have included the generous replanning of London. Although the southern part of the country was more stable, Britain was still an occupied territory, and it was possible rebellion could boil over at any time. In AD 60, Roman London was destroyed and burnt to the ground. Its inhabitants were massacred by Queen Boudicca and the rebellion that she led against the brutal Roman rule of Governor Suetonius Paulinus. This plaque is a replica of part of the governor of Roman Britain's tomb. It was found in a bastion at Tower Hill. He was appointed governor after the Boudiccan revolt. He brought peace to Roman Britain and oversaw a 10-year period of tranquility and prosperity. Today you can follow a Roman wall trail with information panels, like this one, which follows the path of the city wall. We will visit the remaining parts of the wall later in this film. This is the best preserved section of the old city wall, and it stands to its full original height of over 10 meters high. The original Roman wall can be seen at the base up to 4 meters and are easily identified with the characteristic horizontal bands of red tiles. The section above this is medieval masonry. The wall was built from Kent ragstone. An estimated 35,000 cubic meters of Kentish ragstone was quarried 70 miles away, near Maidstone, and then shipped via the Medway and Thames to London. We are continuing north, and just around the corner from Tower Hill, on the east side of Cooper's Row, is a well-preserved section of wall which is located in this hotel courtyard. The importance of Londinium diminished over time, as government of the province was decentralized. Emperor Severus divided Britain into 2 provinces, and eventually it was divided into 5. The intention was to reduce the risk of civil war being started by the army stationed in Roman Britain. Where we are standing is inside of the Roman city. The exact reason why the wall was built is not known. The first wall was only built on the land, so it would have only protected the city from a land attack. Threats to Roman Britain came from a number of sources: rebellion by the Britons, attack from barbarians, civil war within the empire, and unrest ignited by the army stationed in Britain. The outer face of the wall and information panel can be accessed through the archway. The upper part of the wall was renewed and extended during the medieval period to protect the City of London from attack and to control access. Heading north up Crutched Friars, which becomes Jewry Street, and it is here where you will find the entrance to another section of the Roman wall, which has been excellently preserved in a modern purpose-built gallery, created during the redevelopment of this area. You can also access the entrance through an alley from Vine Street. Entry to the gallery and exhibition is free. The Roman wall here is 10 meters long. This section of the wall survived by being incorporated into later buildings, and was rediscovered in 1979 by a team of archaeologists. The wall had been built shortly after a period of civil war within the Roman Empire, which had erupted following the assassination of Commodus in AD 192, and involved Claudius Albinus, the governor of Britain, in an unsuccessful power struggle to become emperor against Septimus Severus. It has been suggested that Severus actually ordered the building of the wall to deter future civil war. This site has an interesting small museum housing an exhibition of archaeological objects recovered on the site. This site also features the foundation of a bastion. This is the only visible Roman bastion along the London Wall. The Romans added D-shaped bastions to the eastern section of the wall in the 4th century, potentially in response to an increased threat from seaborne raiders, such as the Saxons. The bastion would have originally been 9 to 10 meters high and would have been used to locate Roman catapults on top, to fire rocks or iron-tipped arrows down on any attackers. The wall had 20 bastions, the majority were located in this eastern section. These towers were reused in the medieval period as part of the city's defenses. Although you can follow the trail of the wall with a number of information panels, there are no further visible sections of the wall easily accessible to the public until the northwest corner of the Roman city, which we will visit later in this film. We are now retracing our steps back towards the Tower of London to see further traces of the Roman wall. Cross the road via the underpass towards the Tower of London. Although this postern gate is actually medieval, not Roman, it is believed that this gatehouse sits on the site of an earlier Roman gate. Large parts of the Roman wall were incorporated into the medieval city defenses, which mostly followed the route of the original Roman wall. The next traces of the Roman wall can be found within the grounds of the Tower of London. William the Conqueror ordered the building of the tower after the Norman invasion of 1066. The line of the Roman city wall is marked out to the east of the White Tower. The ruins of the Wardrobe Tower, which is visible here, was built in the 12th century on the site of a Roman bastion. In the 3rd century, a riverside wall was added, potentially in response to threats from pirates or opposing factions within the empire. The riverside wall was added during a period of civil war in the Roman Empire. Part of the riverside wall is exposed in the inmost ward, opposite the gift shop. The wall would have run parallel to the wall between the Lantern and Wakefield Towers. The Romans added a riverside wall to London's defences between AD 250 and 270, along the north side of the Thames, and it completed the circuit of the city. To the east of Londinium, the Romans built a series of signal towers, which watched the river and provided an early warning system. Next to the Tower of London is All Hallows by the Tower, which is the oldest church in the City of London. It was founded by the Abbey of Barking in AD 675, some 300 years before the Tower of London was built. The church survived the Great Fire of London in 1666. We are heading downstairs to visit the church's Crypt Museum, which is located in part of the original Saxon church. This is part of the Roman tessellated floor of a late 2nd century domestic house. This Roman pavement was discovered in 1926. The museum has a collection of Roman and Saxon artifacts. The museum also contains a model of Roman London which was created in 1928. This is an arch from the original Saxon church that was made from recycled Roman tiles and stones. It was revealed during the Blitz in World War II. Continuing west along Lower Thames Street, we are now going to visit the remains of a Roman house, the oldest house in London, that is still in its original location. You will need to book your place in advance online, on one of the guided tours arranged by the London Museum. The Roman house is located in the basement of an office building in Billingsgate. The house was built on a waterfront location, in around AD 150. It was extended 100 years later. The rooms in the east wing, nearest to us, had underfloor heating and allowed hot air to circulate underneath the floor and up the walls. The furnace in the far corner would feed the flues of the heating system for this wing. These flues and the pillars supported the east wing floor. A single internal corridor gave access to these heated living rooms that originally may have had mosaic floors. The house continued in use up until the end of Roman London, in the early 5th century AD. The remains of the Roman house were first discovered in 1848, and further discoveries were made during the late 60s. The remains found were either an L-shaped or U-shaped dwelling, with a courtyard or garden at its center. The Roman house had a bathhouse that consisted of a cold, warm, and hot room. Hot air to provide heating for both buildings came from furnaces set directly outside the buildings. 2 corridors served the north and east wings. There was a small undressing room, which has a red tessellated floor. Bathers would enter from the main house and hang their clothing in this room, before proceeding to the hot rooms. These are 2 heated rooms with apses, the tepidarium, the warm room and the caldarium. The caldarium was the hottest room in the bathhouse. Bathers would be massaged with various perfumed oils, after which the excess oil and dirt were scraped off with a metal instrument called a strigil. The small stacks of bricks, called pile, are evidence of a Roman system of underfloor heating. The furnace is the small arch, in the far wall of the caldarium. The floor of the house and bathhouse would have been supported on top of this heated space, called a hypocaust. The hot air circulated under the floor and were drawn up into the walls through hollow rectangular flue tiles called tubuli. Rooms that needed to be the hottest were usually closer to the furnace. On the south side is a large frigidarium. The frigidarium was the coldest room in the bathhouse, and the bather's final stop, where pores opened and cleaned, were now closed with a dip in a cold plunge pool. North of London Bridge is Fish Street Hill. This street is actually on the line of a Roman road that led from the Romans' original wooden bridge. Later it was replaced by the Old London Bridge. Here you will find the monument to the Great Fire of London, that started nearby in 1666. The Roman quay moved over time, potentially as the Thames silted up and the bank of the Thames expanded. Heading towards the river, this is St. Magnus the Martyr, a parish church in Lower Thames Street. It is a significant part of London's history. It used to be the gateway into London, located at the head of the Old London Bridge, the main entrance into the city. The church houses a world-famous model of the Old London Bridge. This church was mentioned in Charles Dickens' novel, Oliver Twist, and the poem The Waste Land by T.S. Eliot. This archway was once a pedestrian entrance onto the Old London Bridge. Outside the church you will find, attached to the bell tower's archway, a fragment of an old wooden beam, and dates from 75 AD. It was found on Fish Street Hill, in the 1930s, during the excavation of the foundations of a nearby building. This shows that River Thames was much wider during the Roman era. We are now going south of the river, to briefly view some Roman remains outside the city walls. As we cross the London Bridge today, the path of the old Roman bridge would have run parallel, slightly to the east. It is believed that the Romans did not start building the bridge here until several years after the Roman invasion. It was potentially built about AD 50. This model of the bridge, and the Roman wharf, is on display in the Museum of London. The bridge was built from wood, and was designed so that ships could pass through it. On the south shore, where the Romans built the bridge, the land here was raised and drier than the marshy land to the east or west. The Roman settlement extended south of the river by AD 60, because archaeological evidence has been found of burnt remains from the time when Boudicca destroyed Londinium. Located on the south side of London Bridge, is Southwark Cathedral. The cathedral was built on the site of an earlier Roman villa. Southwark Cathedral has an interesting history. It was built in 1106, by two knights. Southwark was the place where the Roman roads from the south coast met, before crossing over the river, into Londinium. You would have found at Roman Southwark, a port, lots of trades and industries, many wealthy homes, burial sites, and places of worship. The old Roman road was the main entrance into the city of London. At the entrance to the cathedral there is a corridor, where the result of archaeological excavations show the layered history of the cathedral, starting with the remains of a Roman road from the 1st century AD. At least two Roman roads met at this point before crossing over the Thames. Archaeologists previously found a portion of a Roman villa here, and some of the paving is still on the floor of the south choir aisle. As we retrace our steps back over to London Bridge, to the north side of the River Thames, turn left at the top of Fish Street Hill, and head west along Cannon Street. Cannon Street Station was the site of the Roman governor's palace, built around AD 100. Opposite Cannon Street Station, you will find the London Stone, a chunk of Roman limestone, found nearby, preserved and built into the modern building's wall. It has been suggested it might have been part of the governor's palace, or alternatively the Miliarium, which the Romans used as a marker from which to calculate distances from London. We continue a short distance west along Cannon Street, before turning right into Walbrook. On the left-hand side is the Temple of Mithras. You will need to book your visit in advance. The Temple of Mithras was one of the most important Roman archaeological finds in London's history. A temple was built in about AD 240, on the banks of the river Walbrook, that once flowed through the heart of the Roman city. The temple was a Mithraeum, which was dedicated to the god, Mithras. He was a pagan god possibly of Persian origin. The temple is displayed with a selection of interesting artifacts, found on the site, that you can view before or after visiting the ruins. Among the sculptures found on the site was a head of Mithras himself, recognizable by his Phrygian cap. We are now going underground, descending down a black-tiled staircase to see the ruins. We enter a large, dark room, to see the ruins in the shadows, and with the use of lights, dry ice, and sounds to create a mysterious and ethereal atmosphere, which create a unique experience and help to bring Roman history to life. The ruins are reconstructed, as they appeared in around AD 240. We are heading north up to Guildhall Yard, where you can see the outline of Londinium's Roman Amphitheatre, which is clearly marked out in the yard. Lost for centuries, the Roman Amphitheatre was only discovered in 1988. Its location was a surprising discovery, as the amphitheatre was found within the old Roman city walls. Soldiers sometimes built them just outside the walls of their fort, which could explain why this location was chosen. The surviving remains are protected in a controlled environment, include a stretch of the stone entrance tunnel, east gate, and arena walls. The visible remains are located in a room 20 feet beneath the Guildhall art gallery. Amphitheatres were an integral part of Roman life. Usually events were put on by the upper-class Romans as a way to bond the people and avoid unrest. You can now step into the well-preserved Roman ruins in which huge crowds would once have gathered to watch public displays, including gladiator games, animal fighting, and the execution of criminals. This is the amphitheatre's eastern entrance. It is believed that this was the entrance used by the gladiators to enter the arena. The first amphitheatre was built from wood in AD 70. It was over 100 meters long. This is London's oldest known sporting venue, and it is believed to be the largest amphitheatre in Roman Britain. We are now standing in the amphitheatre's arena. Remnants of the arena wall are still visible. The amphitheatre was also potentially used by the Roman soldiers as a parade ground. These were brutal places and people would have lost their lives here. Gladiators toured the Roman Empire to put on a show, often facing locals. A normal program of events would include in the morning beast shows, followed at lunchtime by executions. Finally in the afternoon would be the main event, the gladiators. Wild beast displays were also part of the show when animals, such as wolves and bears, were fought and killed. A small room has been found on the east side of the arena, where there was possibly a trapdoor. This could have released wild animals into the arena. The arena was also the venue for public executions, athletic contests, boxing, plus musical and religious events. We now head north to the St. Alphage Roman Wall and Gardens, which is located on the road called London Wall. We are at the ruins of the St. Alphage Church. This 12th century church was built adjoining the wall, which by that time had fallen into decline. We are now within the walls of the original Roman fort, which was located in the northwest corner of the city. This area, called London Wall Place, has been redeveloped, creating an open space of grass and flower beds. The area covers the site of the eastern wall of the Cripplegate fort. The original Roman fort was built around 120 AD and was in place before the city wall was built. The fort would have housed 1,000 Roman soldiers and was where the official guard of the governor of Britain was located. When the city wall was built, it incorporated the fort's northern and western walls. The Roman wall continued to be part of London's fortifications until the Saxon period. We are leaving the St. Alphage Wall and continue westwards, parallel with the wall. We turn right into Wood Street. This was the location of the Roman fort's northern gate, which would have extended across the street. There are no visible remains of the Gatehouse today. The gate was later incorporated into the city wall, although it did not lead to an important road. It was still in use during the Saxon period. The Gatehouse was rebuilt in 1490s and went on to have a number of different uses, including being used as a prison, like the more famous Newgate. This is a reconstruction of a Roman fort's gatehouse that has been built at the Arbea Roman Fort, in South Shields, in South Tyneside. Cripplegate was demolished in 1760. We enter the tranquil, Barbican Water Gardens, where the St. Giles Cripplegate, Gothic church, is situated. We are now outside of the city walls. In the later Middle Ages, as the population of London increased, settlements spread outside of the city walls. The Church of St. Giles without Cripplegate is one of only a few surviving medieval churches in the City of London today. We now approach this fine section of wall from outside of the Roman city. The wall that you see today follows the line of the Roman city and fort wall and incorporates Roman core. Some of the towers in this section were added during the medieval period. The foundations of Bastion 11A can be seen here. This portion of the wall is surrounded by a lake, which follows the line of the medieval defensive ditch. The Barbican walls and tower forms the northern tip of the Roman fort. The defensive works north of the gate would subsequently give rise to the name Barbican, which provided the name for this area. The term Barbican comes from Latin barbicana, which translates to the outer fortification of a city or castle. The northwestern corner of the Roman city and the fort are marked by this large medieval tower. The tower today is only 2/3 of its original size. This is Bastion number 12. It is medieval, but stands on Roman foundations. The Romans dug a defensive ditch on the outside of the fort, which was 16 feet wide and 6 feet deep. They piled the earth against the inside of the wall, which strengthened the wall and created a bank. A large fort was built at some time, between AD 100 and 120, possibly in preparation for Emperor Hadrian's visit, in AD 122. It appears to have been built into an existing grid of city streets. The London fort wasn't the seat of Roman government of the province, but it housed a police force and provided accommodation for travelling officers. An earlier fort had been located south of the Cripplegate fort. From here the line of the Roman wall continues around the corner. The city wall and tower, across the moat, are on private property, so make your way around the moat to rejoin the line of the wall at Plaque 15, where we find the remains of a tower, Bastion 13, which was added in the 13th century, on the line of the Roman wall. In the early 4th century Britain and London prospered, being the main supply route for the Roman army on the Rhine, providing much needed food and materials, including timber. As the 4th century continued, transport by water to the Rhine was threatened by attack from the Franks. Exports from Britain were then made from the southern ports to Gaul. It was later incorporated as an apse when the Barber Surgeons' Hall was built in the 17th century. The hall was destroyed during the Blitz. The new Barber Surgeons' Hall was built here in 1969. As the 4th century progressed, the wealth from trade was decentralized. In the early 5th century, government clothing production was moved from London to Winchester. This bastion and remains of the city wall are medieval, and although the wall is built on Roman foundations, there are no remnants of Roman masonry here. This tower, which is located next to the Museum of London's original site, was added in the 13th century to strengthen the defences. In the north of the city was where the Roman fort was located, which from the early 2nd century housed the garrison of the governor of Britain. It would have housed about 1,000 Roman soldiers, including detachments from units stationed across Roman Britain. The fort was originally built outside the city. It followed the standard Roman rectangular playing card design, covering 12 acres, with 4 gates, one on each side of the fort. The fort also had corner and intermediate towers. Today, the rediscovered remains of the fort's western gatehouse can be visited on tours run by the London Museum, which need to be booked in advance. The gatehouse is housed in a room on the right-hand side of the car park entrance. The wall had an outer face on 2 sides, and was then filled with a central core of irregular brick and mortar. Courses of tiles were then laid across, for strength. The wall was then built up in this way, in sections. The Roman fort wall that was incorporated into the city wall was half the thickness of the city wall. A second inner wall was added to the 2 fort walls used. A defensive ditch was dug on the outside of the fort, and the earth was piled against the inside of the wall for strength and to create a bank. This is the west gate of the Roman fort, and the only surviving Roman gate of the fort and Londinium city wall. You will need to book your place on a tour of the Gatehouse, which are arranged by the Museum of London. The city wall included several gates. 2 of the fort's gates were incorporated as city gates, including this one and the one at Cripplegate. Next door to the Roman Gatehouse, in the underground car park, we are going to see an impressive piece of Roman wall, which you can find in Bay 53. This surviving chunk of wall and the Gatehouse are the best preserved remains of Londinium's Roman fort. This was not part of the city wall or exterior fort wall, but appears to be part of an internal fort wall. It was discovered in 1957, when the road above was being dug out. Tell the security staff, in the office, halfway along the car park, that you wish to look at the Roman wall. We are now crossing over the road, which is called London Wall, to visit our final destination on this tour. Our final destination is Noble Street, where we will look at the Roman remains of the fort and city wall. You can get a distant view of Noble Street, from the raised walkway above the Roman gatehouse and wall, where we can see the line that the wall took. Here we can get an idea of the size of the Roman fort, from the length of West Wall, which ran from the Bastion at the Barbican, down to the bottom of Noble Street. These remains were uncovered after the devastation caused by the German bombing of London during World War II. This is one of the last bomb sites from the London Blitz that you can still visit today. The masonry ranges between the 2nd and 19th century. The majority of the walls that we can see are actually medieval. The Roman sections that remain can be seen at the bottom of the ruins. London was renamed Augusta, a name it kept until the end of Roman rule. Part way along the wall you can see the foundations of an intermediate Roman fort turret, which would have given access to the walkway around the top of the wall. At the far end of the wall are the remains of a sentry tower that would have been used to access the parapet of the wall. This marks the southwestern corner of the Roman fort. In AD 306 Emperor Constantinius died in York. His son Constantine, born of a Romano-British mother, Helena, was made emperor by his troops. York and London became the first capitals of a Christian emperor. When the Roman occupation of Britain came to an end, it happened gradually. There was no sense of liberation following the withdrawal of the Roman army. After nearly 400 years of occupation, the Romano-Britons had become Roman. The army had been withdrawn gradually from Britain, in response to barbarian threats in Europe and civil war within the empire. In AD 410 Britain asked for assistance from Rome, in response to Saxon raids, but Emperor Honorius advised the province that Britain would have to defend itself. The Roman occupation of Britain had effectively ended. Britain from this date onwards was independent. The Roman way of life and governance continued in Britain, gradually fading over time. Eventually the Roman cities fell into ruin and the villas were abandoned. Today London is a modern vibrant city, with a population of over 8 million people. It is also visited by millions of tourists every year, coming to see the many historic sites and other popular places that London has to offer. But how many of them know of the city's Roman origin or the historic Roman remains that still exist today? In this film we have visited the remains of Roman London that are open to the public. It is possible that further remains will be uncovered in the future, which will continue to add to our understanding of Londinium, the capital of Roman Britain. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe and leave a comment.